have they reached Middle East peace? Mondays with Mike.
Mondays with Mike. Mondays with Mike.
Okay, next topic. Middle East peace? Hostages to be released on Monday 13th or Tuesday the 14th? So, my 1-year-old daughter figured out how to operate the remote. And the first thing she put on was like a Bollywood musical compilation, but I think the second thing she put on was the news. And it was like, people celebrating. So, have they reached a peace deal in the Middle East? Is this good news? Is this what I think it is? Is this good news?
So far, it looks like it's a ceasefire that could lead to a peace deal. But right now, my understanding is it's just a ceasefire with a bunch of unspecified dates for the two-state solution thing. So it's not clear that it's actually going to go through, but definitely the ceasefire part of it is. The hostage exchange and the stopping of hostilities for at least a little while. But the other stuff is still, I think, I don't know if it's fully negotiated, but it certainly looks like there's no definite like timeline put in place. So that's still something that's being worked out. But the ceasefire part seems real. I don't see a reason why it wouldn't be real.
Okay. So there's this 20-point plan, and this comes after, as they say in the news. The UN votes on the recognition of a Palestinian state with many Western nations and many nations voting in favor of that. I don't know, because we've heard about a two-state solution since the 40s. And do you predict that this is likely to lead to a two-state solution? Is it essentially aiming at that, or what's the dealio?
I'm not so sure that it will. They've had plans in the past, right, that were made, and then at some point those plans fail. And so it's not so clear that these plans will continue to hold, in part because one of the parties that agreed to the plan, it's not so clear that their hold on political power stay there. So Israel, I think, will definitely be a country and be a political entity well into the future, right? It's going to be around for the long haul. It's not so clear that the other party to the plan actually has as firm a hold on political power as would be required to uphold the terms of the deal, right? Reasons that deals fail is that the political situation changes, is that the entities that agreed to the original deal no longer are entities, or that some other power comes in, some other group comes into power, and suddenly the deal has to be renegotiated or changed, or a new deal has to be made, right? And so we'll see, but I am skeptical. Let's put it that way. I'm skeptical that this deal is going to be the be all end all, that it's going to be the thing, because the situation in that region of the world is so unpredictable, right? It's so volatile that while it may hold for a while, the situation may certainly change. Part of the issue is that Israel is also currently either in active hostilities or partial hostilities with Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iran. And situations change. Countries win wars, countries lose wars. We'll see. Part of it actually has to do with how well Russia succeeds in the war in Ukraine, because Russia was backing at least one of the countries that's Israel's fighting Syria. If Russia becomes more powerful in the future, then they may choose another proxy state by which to engage in their own little fighting in the region. That area of the world is just incredibly volatile. Like, you have to really study the power bases and the lines in the sand, and with the situation there, like, it's not so clear that it's going to hold. And part of that too has to actually do with politics in the US, that this is an agreement that's being made by the Trump administration, and it's not so clear that the next administration will hold the same political priorities with a deal like this. The situation could change there too. We'll see. Because part of the deal is a little strange with some of the technocratic stuff, and some of the investment that's happening due to the who the benefactors are of the economic investment. And so it's just, that may change. We'll see. So I'm skeptical. Let's just say that. I don't think it's the be all end all, because deals in the past haven't been 100% successful. All the accords, all the agreements that have been signed, they make a ceasefire and then the ceasefire is broken a day later. We'll see. I think the agreement will last as long as the prisoner exchange, for sure, that they're going to exchange the hostages and the prisoners. But then everything after that, I think, is up in the air. The situation is very tenuous. It's volatile.
And another part of it is that the U.S. is going to send 200 troops to Israel as observers. Time was that I seem to recall, we were like, we must not send troops. We must not be seen as aiding one side or the other in that particular conflict, lest we incur the wrath of religious extremists. I think that was at least the implicature, if not a direct statement, in the 2000s decade. But this seems to fly in the face of that. Hasn't Israel's national ethos been that it must defend Israel by itself? This seems to be a reversal of that to me.
It certainly seems like a reversal. That's the way this current situation is. We see all sorts of norms being shattered and changed, and this is added to the pile of things that are different. It strengthens our position in the location by having troops right there. The point here is Israel's made it pretty clear, if they don't agree to it, that they're just going to keep steamrolling all of Gaza and bombing it and destroying all the buildings and just keep doing that. This at least gives them an out, right, of not complete destruction. That's the situation. They are not in a strong position to negotiate, right? Like, they either agree to the deal or they get completely destroyed. It's not like they have some huge army lying around or weapons, or their backs are against the wall. It's pretty clear. They haven't been winning. They've been losing a lot in very serious ways, right? Like, their leadership has been attacked. It's not so clear they have any resources at their disposal. I can't imagine they've got tons of people lying around that can fight anymore. Like, they've been constantly attacked. This may be the best deal they're going to get, because the alternative is just more destruction. Because at some point, if Israel just keeps destroying them, it's no longer a ceasefire agreement or a peace deal. It's give us your unconditional surrender or be destroyed completely. Because once the hostages are gone, there's no leverage. The hostages are the main reason, as far as I can tell, why it hasn't been complete destruction. It's a total war. There's no real impediment, right? There's no other power that's going to come in and save Gaza. The only people that could stop that or save Gaza are the UN Security Council, which is Russia, China, the US, France, the UK. Like, they're not going to do it. They're not going to vote to intervene on stopping Israel for a variety of reasons, mainly that the US has a veto on the Security Council. And it just takes one permanent member of the Security Council to veto any military intervention. So that's not happening. It's not like the countries around Gaza are all itching to send in their armies or to fight, right? They understand that Israel is a strong military power backed by a hegemon, right? So they either accept the deal now or they get a worse deal in the future. And the worst deal in the future would be worse, right? Like, way worse. So I think this situation is probably the best they're going to get, given the situation that is at hand. Look, all my understanding of this conflict is based on publicly available information. I don't know what the behind the scenes stuff is. I don't know if there's more somewhere else, right? Maybe they have some huge armada or store of weapons somewhere else. It doesn't look like that. If they had it, they probably would have used it by now. Like, the devastation's pretty bad. It doesn't look good. It looks really bad. Most of the built material is gone. It's destroyed. It's not good. What's left?
Yeah, you raise an interesting point and cast the issue with a degree of sobriety that I hadn't really approached, just hearing it on the radio in a very busy week at work. And I think that is a testament to how the average person views politics, and they hear peace in the Middle East, and they know that, oh, that's a goal afar off, but here it is, question mark. The terrible thing about it, too, is, yeah, if they aren't concerned any longer because the hostages are home, then conflict could accelerate. An agreement is based on the mutual agreeability of the parties, which has to do with their esteem for each other. Or a peace deal might be based on, if we go against this peace deal, then what will people think of us? People won't be able to trust us. So it's not exclusively that. So yeah, an agreement is just an agreement between two groups, and if they don't regard each other, then it might not hold. So I guess this isn't over, and it could continue. We can be hopeful, but is our hope founded in reason? I don't know.
Look, international politics is complicated. We don't know. We won't know. We can't know, really, because that's behind the scenes stuff. Whether this agreement is a facade, right? Whether it's just an opportunity to get the hostages back, to create a new opportunity to completely demolish Hamas, right? Once the bargaining chip's gone, there is nothing left to stop Israel from unleashing everything it has to destroy Hamas once and for all. Part of the issue with this agreement is it's not even clear whether one of the parties to the agreement fully agrees with it unilaterally. And when you don't have a unilateral agreement, when you have a division within the people agreeing to it, it's not even clear the deal will hold, right? Who are they actually making a deal with? Are they making a deal with the Palestinian people? Are they making a deal with some of the people? Are they making a deal with a fraction of the leadership of the group that they're making a deal with? Who are they making a deal with? Do those people actually hold sway within the organization they're making a deal with? That's why I'm skeptical of this agreement actually holding, because it's not so clear that everybody's on board. If everybody's not on board, but you don't actually have an agreement, you just have a statement, right? We did it, yay! If they manage to convince the faction holding the hostages to let go of the hostages, that's still a win. If they get all the hostages back, right? If there's 0 hostages remaining in Gaza, that's still a huge victory, right? Time will tell. We will see if this holds.
Okay, yeah, and we can be hopeful, but we don't know. We don't necessarily know. It was funny to me, too, that the deal contained a section. One of the 20 sections was essentially, if Hamas doesn't cooperate with this deal, we're going to do the deal anyway. I thought, if it's a deal, and then part of the deal is, doesn't matter whether or not you agree to this deal, then can it even be said to be a deal?
It's not really at that point, isn't it? It's a deal you can't refuse.
Yeah, you've been made an offer you can't refuse, yeah. It's if courtesy is mandatory, is it even worthy of the term courtesy? I found that particular point of the quote-unquote deal interesting. The new art of the deal. Make a deal, but it doesn't matter if the other party agrees to it. Okay, so there's this prank which NBC reported on Thursday the 9th, and the prank is that people, mostly teenagers it would appear, have a picture of their home, or a video of their home. But then with AI, they have the ability to interpose an image of a homeless person, or perhaps a video of a homeless person, I'm not 100% clear, upon the previous image. So we have reached the age where we can no longer trust, it would appear, photographs and video, because this prank has resulted... Okay, so they make this video, and then they send it to a parent or somebody, and the parent freaks out because there's a stranger in my home and I'm not there. Oh crap. The way this was presented on the news was a police officer or a law enforcement representative, whoever, was warning people about this prank. And it sounded to me like, don't do this prank, because if the cops get called, and there's a risk of people being swatted. Now, but in a previous podcast, we were talking about number of texts sent out per second, and I said, oh, a limitation might be reasonable, and you said we need to consider free speech as well, whether it's free speech. And so I thought about this from a similar perspective. Isn't it just free speech? It's somebody's home.
No, it's dangerous. So it's not free speech to fake an emergency or to fake some kind of thing that initiates a law enforcement response, because it's a crime to call something like 911 with a fake emergency. So it's no longer free speech. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but there's a real danger in America in particular that when there's a police response, somebody can get shot. So this happened with swatting. There was a guy in Nebraska, I think, was swatted. Cops got the wrong house. Guy comes out with a gun. The guy gets shot and killed. Right? People who did use swatting from online video games, they've been arrested. They've been thrown in jail for a long time because bad consequences can happen when law enforcement responds with uncertainty to a situation. And because this can be used in negative ways, it's no longer a prank. There's malice in there because really bad things can happen, and they can happen in moments. They can make it look like there's someone dangerous, someone armed, someone with a gun, someone with a knife. And then the cops show up armed, expecting someone armed as a threat. There becomes real situations that are dangerous, right? And you don't want that. You don't want a society where people are getting shot over pranks. It's bad. There's nothing good about it. There's no circumstance I can think where it's good or funny or free speech, because it's dangerous. You have to think really carefully for any kind of prank just how dangerous it can get, right? If they make it AI that makes it look like there's arson, or they make it look like there's an explosion, or they make it look like there's a bomb or a gun or a knife, it gets dangerous fast. With law enforcement responses in the United States, they're allowed to use lethal force if they think there's a reasonable fear of their life. And because this can be used to generate a reasonable fear of their life, they can use force. If we had a different kind of police response in the United States, maybe if they send in robots that don't shoot people, but we don't have that. The last time I can think of the cops using a robot to respond to a crime was in Houston, where they sent in a robot armed with explosives and they blew up a guy in a parking lot. Okay. So that happened. It was the guy who shot at cops at a parade, and they cornered him in a parking lot. I think they thought that he was armed. They sent in a bomb diffusing robot. It was armed with explosives. Kaboom, dead guy in parking lot. Okay. So there's no free speech here. Free speech is something that doesn't result in violence or harm. And the problem with this prank is that it can result in extreme violence really fast. And so it's no longer a prank. It's a crime as far as I'm concerned. So that would be my statement there in no uncertain terms. Any kind of image of an armed intruder or someone who looks violent, because it has the possibility of being responded to with extreme violence on the part of U.S. law enforcement, it's just the way the world is right now. Don't do it. Just don't do it. It makes the world less safe.
Okay. So I think that this is an entirely new situation for which we do not have a precedent. We do not have a like precedent wherein convincing photographic or video evidence of something exists, but that thing is not actually happening.
We have maybe not photo or video evidence, but certainly there's examples of people calling in with fake audio of something, or fake sound recordings through swatting or through spoofing, where they make something seem like someone somewhere due to their internet when they're not, right? Like, we have situations like that have happened. That's the ones I'm referring to, the people who are in jail right now because they swatted someone over some dispute or disagreement in a video game, and then people get harmed, they get killed, or they get arrested, and bad things happen. This is a similar kind of situation. Have you ever watched the movie Ghost in the Shell?
No, that I've not watched.
So that's a lady who her job is essentially to deal with cyber crimes. That's the thing I'm thinking of in terms of fake identities or images that show things that aren't there. It's a highly advanced society where she's a cop whose job is to sort out what the truth is. And it's a mess, right? Because you're dealing with computers and AI and programs and constantly shifting identities. That could be the future, no question, of how we interact with each other, but it's a scary future. Because if you cannot discern fiction from reality with what you're seeing, right, in any circumstance, it becomes really difficult for ascertaining what the appropriate response to something is. That's just my thought. That our tools are very primitive in some senses in how we respond to things, still like weapons and violence. And it's not so clear that how we respond to things will advance in tandem with the technology that's being used, if that makes sense. That we don't have good filters.
Sure. If I could parse it a little bit more, I would say that the previous instances of swatting would have involved just lying to the cops or to whomever, and then they go and they deploy the SWAT team. So the originator of the falsehood then speaks the falsehood to the party, and the party who was told the falsehood is not then it is then they were operating under the wrong information which they shouldn't have been given.
They're always responsible for how they respond. Just because something is said doesn't mean that's what it is. And part of the job is quite seriously to accurately assess the situation when you get there. Part of the problem is that these responses are in fact human because there's an element of fear involved. That's where the violence happens, is when you've got uncertainty matched with fear, that the fear can sometimes override the wait and assess part of the job, and that you go in and then thinking the situation is one thing and then it's a different situation. That's why I'm saying like a robot would be better, or some kind of like non-human, non-fear entity that would just figure out what's going on. Maybe nanotech or like a drone or something. Like there needs to be more of a job done figuring out what the actual situation is before bad things happen. We know this, right? We understand. Part of the problem is just fear. It just complete 100% like not wanting to get hurt. I understand that part, but there's got to be ways around that. Ask the questions, and then if the situation warrants it, shoot. Don't just assume, right, immediately that it is what it is. That's the whole issue with this fake thing that's happening, is that we don't live in a situation where the assess and then respond. We live in a situation of the respond. If the situation's considered dire enough, something really bad, then sometimes the protocol is just to respond.
To return for a moment, previously swatting someone was you thought of a lie and then you told the lie. But let's replace the lie with the AI video, because it is, in a sense, a lie. How about this? I would ask that we consider that the problem is not that such a video was made, but that it was shared in some kind of way.
Look, context is everything. If it's a video shared between friends for a laugh, okay, it's a silly video shared between friends. It's the fact that it's being used to trigger a response from an entity that's not in on the joke. So if they're in on the joke already from the get-go, okay, everybody laughs, haha, funny. It's only if it's used in such a manner as to trigger a different kind of response that's unexpected, that has unknown variables. So what do I mean by that? If it's used in a way shown to parents where they freak out thinking that there's some like stranger trespassing in their home that poses a threat to their kids, right? That then triggers a survival response where they call the cops and they go, help my kids. That's different. It's one thing. Look, comedy is one thing where everybody's in on the joke. It no longer becomes comedy if there's malice, if there's any kind of uncertainty where the variables are no longer within your control. If the whole situation's a closed loop, if it's just friends or it's just in a presentation where everybody understands it's a joke, fine. But in the circumstance described, not everybody knows it's a joke. Not everybody understands it's a joke. If somebody breaks in and smears like, I don't know, hair conditioner over somebody's face, and they don't know that it's hair conditioner, and everybody else is ha, laugh, ha, and then they wake up, and it turns out they have an allergic reaction to the hair conditioner. Their face breaks out in hives, and they have to go to the emergency room. Oops, maybe they should have known ahead of time whether the person was allergic. they weren't in on the joke. They had malice, right? Because they didn't understand ahead of time what the problem was. And the problem is the unknown variables, if that makes sense. Like it's the lack of caution that it's too great a risk.
The last question was what kind of regulation should there be on AI? But the short answer that I was going to give was it's going to be too difficult to do that. People have their own devices.
No, there's actually a simple answer. So you have a watermark or some kind of identifying feature for all AI created content. So there has to be some way for law enforcement to immediately notice that it's AI created content. So some kind of filter or some kind of backdoor in the internet technology where they can press in a command and it says, this was created by AI. This is fake, right? And if they mandate that all AI companies do this for their technology, some kind of code, some kind of symbol, some kind of thing, then the people using it may not know that such a thing exists, but all law enforcement would know, right, that it's fake. They can put in some kind of filter, some kind of command, immediately they get notified and they go, okay, I don't have to actually take this seriously. That's an easy answer. And in the early days of the internet, they actually tried doing that, where they created a backdoor for all internet so that the government would be able to, if need be, get into any website, anything they need. I don't know if that actually panned out, but I know that it was tried, right? And so the same kind of principle could apply here, that if AI wants to actually operate on the market, that's where government's really important, right? Why you need legislation and competent representatives doing stuff like that.
Mondays with Mike.